Hi, good morning, and welcome to today's webinar dubbed 2024 Technology, Media, and Telecom Predictions. Before we start, I want us to take note of a few housekeeping rules. First, I want us to know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube page. Currently, all participants have been muted, and during the question and answer, you can raise your hand saying you're muted to speak. You can as well drop all your comments and questions in the Q&A chat box on your screen. A survey link will be posted getting to the end of the webinar, so you can provide us with your feedback. Also, to make this more interactive, we have created polls for your feedback on issues on this webinar. Without wasting my time, I would like to hand over to the Risk Advisory Partner, Mr. Kofi Iwa, to kickstart the meeting. Thank you.
Kofi Iwa is currently the Risk Advisory Partner and Technology, Media and Telecom Industry Leader at Deloitte, Ghana, with over 13 years' experience in risk management. He has worked and delivered transformational projects to global and regional clients in financial services, telecom, oil and gas, manufacturing, and public sector. Kofi has both industry and practice experience working as an ex-banker in one of the leading banks in Nigeria, and as risk management specialist for two of the global Big Four professional services firms in Nigeria and Ghana. His wealth of practical experience has distinguished him as the go-to person by top industry practitioners on risk management matters.
Good morning and welcome to the Deloitte 2024 Technology, Media and Telecommunication Prediction Webinar. Indeed, we are excited to have you industry leaders, experts, and enthusiasts to gather here today to delve into the future trends that shapes the vital sectors of our economy, which is the TMT. The 2024, as it is, promises to be a transformative year, especially in our beloved country, Ghana, as we witness groundbreaking development across 4 key areas, which are generative AI, sustainability, media, entertainment and sports, and the telecommunication and technology space. These areas are at the forefront of innovation and expansion, impacting and reshaping our society and ultimately driving economic growth. Throughout this webinar, we'll delve into the predictions and trends set to define 2024. We'll offer valuable insights. We'll have expert analysis and also discuss actionable strategies for navigating this dynamic landscape. I want to encourage you all to actively engage, ask questions, and participate in discussions to maximize this opportunity. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Let us embark on an insightful and enriching section together. I'll hand over to Edward, who is going to take us through the conversation of the day. Thank you.
Edward Akins is a result-driven professional with extensive experience in technology-driven transformation. His global expertise in technology, telecommunications, and financial technology supports his outcome-driven engagements and projects delivered across multiple industries. Edward specializes in solution conceptualism, the innovation process, the development of customer solutions and digital products, go-to-market engagements, negotiation, and strategic people development. Edward is the Senior Manager Technology within the Consulting Business Unit at Deloitte, Ghana, and leads teams to deliver a wide range of technology services, digital transformation, and emerging technology.
Hi, good morning, and welcome to our TMT prediction for 2024. I'll quickly share my screen and we will go through our presentation. So, like Kofi mentioned, our presentation is going to go across 4 key areas, and listed here, generative AI is going to take quite a chunk of our discussions. We'll look at sustainability. We'll talk about media, entertainment, and sports, and then we will delve deep into telecom and technology. All of them, we have deep details that we will share with you. My first area of engagement will be across AI. So the buzzword has been AI for quite a while now, and now enterprises are looking into making sure they get the best out of it. It's going to really help enterprise institutions place themselves higher than their competitors who are not utilizing these tools. 4 key areas. Deloitte did a survey, and we are thinking what we saw, and our thoughts were around the fact that most of the top big enterprise software developers are looking and planning to offer software product that has AI embedded in them. So we think 2024 will be the year we'll see an uptake or growth in softwares, and therefore some revenue uplift will come for the manufacturers or OEMs, around $10 million dollars. And then we think that rate will keep increasing. It started from basically 2022, and we're seeing that uplift coming up. We know for sure that 70% of organizations are experimenting with generative AI in various forms based on the industry they are in, and we believe that it will help them place themselves above competition. The model of delivery of these AI solutions embedded within enterprise will be twofold and even more based on innovation. We think that 3 key, big AI software market areas will focus on productivity suites. We are thinking that document management will be key in the usage of AI, and also software development tools. How would we use that into being able to churn out applications quicker and faster? You see that within the computer-aided designs and manufacturing areas. In the model of delivery, the organizations that are delivering these solutions that we spoke to are looking to do that in 2 models. AI would not be for free. To get the best out of it, it won't be for free. So it's either they are charging based on the queries you deliver, you request from the system, as small as 0.1 cent, or is growing up into per user per month of about $10. And those are all aggregating into making sure that at least the organizations are able to use the best of the solutions they have. The cost might come down as we scale up, and so 2024 and 25 might see just the high cost being enterprises paying for the high cost at the moment. But as we scale up and more manufacturers or OEMs come into the system, we'll see the pricing coming down. But we also believe that as enterprises, the knowledge users begin to participate in it more, those volumes will grow, and therefore the per unit cost will come down. What are we saying that this matters? It matters because we think the IT, because of this value it will bring to institutions, IT companies will be spending more into making sure that this capability is within their businesses. The capabilities that we're talking about, we have to consider quite a few things. The first, we have 4 key areas of consideration, but my first pointer would be the per user per month pricing. That model will be a little bit more tough for smaller institutions, but we think that if we start with free models, the growth will be when you get into the model where you start with free, but the more you use, you begin to pay. That becomes a hybrid model that small enterprises will start using. And we think that generative AI inside enterprise software is likely going to be the gateway for them to be able to lift themselves from where they are and connect with various global capabilities to help them grow. The bottom line is we have seen changes. The knowledge workers using AI tools to do work. We see faster delivery, and we see quality in the outcomes of the deliverables. And we're also seeing that that return on investment will not help organizations be able to generate high value. So the key pointer would be, we need to start putting strategies together and considering AI. So before, organizations have been experimenting on consumer facing, which is public information or public data, which has its own issues. So we're looking at making sure that enterprise institutions use proprietary data they've generated based on their own operations, and we apply AI's capabilities to really bring out the value, show trends, and also bring out some how they call it, high thought, complex things that you might not be able to see with your naked eyes, to be able to make decisions based on that. So we're saying that we need to support organizations to be able to use the proprietary data and with the support of AI to be able to churn out these advantages. Companies who have compiled or accumulated data for this long period, is now the opportunity for you to be able to embed AI to be able to get sense of what is inside your data, to pick trends and be able to model new products and solutions from there. In 2024, we predict that enterprise spending on capabilities as such will grow by 30%, therefore estimated to be around 16 billion that we started with in 2023 and moving into 24 and then growing into 25 as well. The main limitations would be, do you as an enterprise institution have the talent to support you deliver, or do you have also the processing capability, so the GPUs to be able to do the analysis of the huge amount of data to bring the outcomes that you're looking for? So that's where basically third-party specialists like Deloitte is positioning themselves for. Why does this matter? So private models can minimize the risk. So if you look at public data, you are looking at infringing on intellectual property and stuff. So our thinking is around being able to use Gen AI. We can help companies get deeper lens into their data and combine the mining capabilities to be able to make complex situations very simple for decision making. Private models will be the way forward. It will bring the risk totally down. The challenges of engagement with public data will all be reduced, and we think that that will lead people into excelling. But the conversation around what you need to consider will be around the model. Every institution will be different in every industry. So we're saying that data that you have cannot be just used as it is. We need to require models that will use good data. Therefore, data will have to be refined properly before the usage comes through. Each institution will be different. The pathways of modeling your solution will require where you are in your strategy, which industry, and then the digitization level that you are in the business. That will support your unique needs, and therefore we can consider cost, performance, security, data types that you have, and we'll be able to build your strategic objectives for you. The bottom line is that combining data and private data would help companies optimize cost. It will help them move away from public models, and it will help them be competitive. And that's the thinking that we saw based on our engagements with the market that we investigated. Regulation. So the excitement is nice, the outcomes are great, but then it will be of no use if we're not regulating, so that infringement will not be made. So AI regulations are key. We're seeing the European Union leading in charters to be able to help us put a framework to support how it is used, so that people can have the confidence, enterprises can have the confidence to participate in it. There are various regulations that are at stake at the moment that will also comply. Basically, GDPR that had come from the global institutions will also be the base where we start from. There's also the AI Act that is currently in play. I think it should have finished there. They should have finished passing that by end of March, but I still believe that some things are happening. But we are sure that within this year, the AI Act will be in place. The scope of these regulations will cover direct applications of the vendors operating from every market, basically the hyperscalers who are operating from any market. And also when we come down locally, market may use regulation templates from EU to really drive that. And also when you come to local agenda, they will use that to be able to mimic what we think the local conditions would be. Therefore, governance for governments and other big institutions will look at these templates to drive the regulations. The last bit will be on AI. We'll cover thoughts around the deployments that are coming through. We believe that if Gen AI is expected to bring a boost in companies' outcomes, we'll look at making sure that companies are compliant at their local level and also fulfill the global part as well. So people who will be affected, providers and deployers, those who are manufacturing it or developing it will be affected by the regulations. There are things they need to put in and things they can't. There are authorities and agencies that will be managing in the localities, and also those who implement it. So deployers, basically the persons and the authorities, agencies are all going to be under the context of the regulatory frameworks that will be put across. So why is it needed? The bottom line is we believe that regulations matters. It will basically bring the confidence for enterprise and consumers to use it. It will also give the regulators a place to really formulate sandboxes for innovation and test. And these are those would be the reasons why we think we can grow it exponentially within the space that we're looking for the growth. So in case of this generative AI, Africa is doing quite a lot in solving African problems. So the baseline would be we need to be able to follow through the rules and craft solutions that can solve Africa's problems. Our next key area is around sustainability. It's been on the agenda for quite a while and key for telcos in a sense that 90% of the world's digitization agenda is being powered by these telcos across the world and specifically in Ghana. And we think that for them to be able to deliver the services and the edge to be able to remain for the generations to come, we need to look at what to be done. Currently, the whole ecosystem of telcos are responsible for 1.6 of the global gas emissions, and therefore we need to work on that. Although it's not a bad figure, but we need to be able to make sure that that grows as we expand the digital agenda within regions. 4 approaches, basically. We need to look at shutting down certain legacy infrastructures like the copper cables. We need to be able to deliver, we need to be able to look at, sorry about that. We need to be able to look at the new technologies that can drive more efficient use of power. So we are advising the switch of certain network 2G and 3G, and then focus on special antennas that can deliver an energy efficiency and also be able to power more services to the institutions that we are supporting. Okay, so we looked at switching off old copper systems, and this will also be the same for telcos and also for the media as well. We are keen on bringing on the 4G discussions. I know there's testing going on currently, but the key areas we are looking for is shutting down copper networks and switching to fiber. We're looking at making sure that we shut down 3G networks that are not efficient enough, and we're looking to bring in the support services that are delivered for the telco guys, the guys who do installations and support, to be able to switch their fleet to EVs so that at least we can save some energy from there. And also we're looking at making sure that they bring on board networks that are more efficient within the 5G and discussions that we had. So at the moment, we're moving forward for moving to standalone 5Gs that can deliver more capabilities. So we are saying that telcos are publicly listed, so they are also mandated by law to fulfill certain sustainability KPIs. So other institutions will buy services from these telcos if they know that they are earth conscious and doing things in the ESG vein. The bottom line is telcos are making use of multiple levers, and we think it's important that their profiles that they are using to deliver sustainability should be shared. So our conversations are clear. To cover connectivity in areas where we think will impact humanity, we need to look at using the best network services that delivers the utmost, efficiency in energy. So on ESG, which is basically, we're looking at environmental, social, and governance. There are key metrics that organizations should follow. What we discovered is that institutions are now moving away from voluntarily fulfilling these ESG KPIs to now being mandated, whether they are listed or they are formulated by the government institutions, they are being mandated to be able to fulfill in that. And we think software systems that will help these organizations to report properly is needed. And as such, we've seen a boom in the market for these kind of software platforms that are enabling institutions to monitor their usage of services and then also tap into backend data to be able to bring models that will help report to the regulators in there, whether they are listed or not, being able to report, and also give their consumers confidence of their awareness of how they need to make money and also sustain the earth for the children and the future of our children. And we see that those platforms that will enable organizations to do these type of analysis to be able to fulfill is growing, and we see that that market will grow from 1 billion beyond 2024 to about 2.6 in the next few years to come. Everybody's moving to net zero. So the target is for all business to also follow suit. We believe that if we don't challenge institutions, our how do you call it? Our ed will be at stake. So global regulatory actions are coming through. Organizations that operate locally and internationally are being bound by law to be able to fulfill it. And we should be able to provide platforms that can track these reporting and make them available for trust and also for commercial gains as well. The bottom line is, with stakeholders all interested in these comprehensive reports, we believe that some of these technology tools should be able to support compliance for all these areas. And our prediction would be the growth in applications to do that. Organizations to be able to should look forward to enabling these kind of platforms to support them to manage their ESG indicators. On same sustainability, we are seeing a shift in how agri-tech is looked at. There's a new ground that we think is fulfilling harvest, and we see about 18 billion of revenue coming from sustainable farming. And what we have seen is, because of climate change and disruptions in some geopolitical issues, there is the need for us to drive a conversation around how do we support Africa, West Africa, Ghana to be able to position themselves in enabling technology to deliver, how do you call it, agri-tech to support growth. We believe that these solutions will help bring more than 20% of carbon emissions and to support the agri space, and also bring security to the food that we provide and have the future of feeding to be secured. Even in commodity prices, we believe that our input cost can be reduced if we're using these agri-tech solutions. And also our position here is to be able to place to support these institutions within the bigger governmental agencies to efficiently reduce carbon emissions by tracking and managing and using technology to support efficiencies in the delivery of agricultural products. We see areas focusing on how do we track and manage agricultural equipment and making them efficiently used. We see things around livestock management to be able to feed and manage livestock properly, and also precision farming, delivering water, energy to plants individually and making sure that their outputs are high enough, therefore cutting out the waste in production. Growing food and managing livestock sustainability is key, and I think livestock is one of the key contributors to GHG, which means we need to be able to manage them in all the activities they do, and technology will be supporting to do that. AI is supporting in cultivation, AI and IoT combined is supporting in smart farming, and we believe that venture capitalists are now investing in agricultural institutions that are looking to provide or use technology to be able to deliver solutions so that each territory or region can be independent and produce and not rely of international producers because of the interruptions going on from these wars and geopolitical issues interrupting supply chains for things that African needs like wheat and flour. In the at the bottom line, we are thinking that agri-tech will see quite an injection of technology, and therefore it will bring down its component of greenhouse gases. Sustainability indicators would be increased, and I think our indication is that in the combination of using IoT, using AI, and cloud-based analytics, we should be able to support the agri-tech, maintain a good sustainability indicator, and then be able to help feed the future of our population. Now, moving into media and entertainment, there's been a big shift in what we call, streaming video services. The shift would be looking up to the profitabilities that it's going to be delivering and the probabilities around how the viewers will participate, therefore bringing commercial gains and also be able to deliver technology-based solutions across. So TV and film industry have been caught up in a decline because of some of these trends that we have seen. Streamers are spending quite a lot of time, and the content providers are also supporting because the market is all available. And we believe that if we focus on broadening the appeal, we can support moving forward the consumption of technology in media by quite a big percentage. Therefore, our what we've seen on the market would be the providers of media and telecom and entertainment services to be able to position their content in the vein of competition coming from the user-generated content. We see that companies should be able to build bouquets for end users or consumers in various tiers, understanding the need of each market and also individual consumers and then enterprise market as well. So at the base, we are showing models that were before in 2023, where organizations had institutions and consumers had a small package to pick from. Now the model is changing because the competition is fierce. They need to remodel and package in various tiers to fit in all the consumers that are available. So to do that, technology is key, and the streaming video business is expensive. We're thinking for pay TV to be profitable, they will need to capture streaming business and have some kind of collaboration in sharing across content to be able to reach out to a lot more people. We have seen the growth in what we call the payout into content builders being done in such a way that they have professionally delivered to make sure it's available for consumption at various levels of the channels of delivery. We are seeing persistent churn and strong competition, and therefore we are advising, and what we see is that the offerings might be more sticking together. It's like it has to be a collaborated, connected services that are delivered to the end users. Why does this matter? It matters because we believe video business is at an inflection point and is shifting from growth to profitability. The main requirement here is to fight churn and build diversity in revenue by providing various services across various platforms, integrated platforms, to be able to bring the revenues that we're looking for. The bottom line is that the media institution are raising subscription prices, adding contracts, and focusing on intermittent advertising just to reduce the subscription rate and be able to bring innovative pricing model to keep their customers that they have, so that they are not moving away from this short intermittent user provided content, to be able to keep their clients and also generate enough revenue from them. So a blend of advertising and subscription is now becoming the key for these media institutions to look at. So we're looking at the audio market. We've seen quite a lot of growth in the audio market, growing at an exponential rate. And I think Ghana, we launched our digital audio broadcast platform. This is in line with what we see in the growth of listenership on various platforms across. We're seeing growth in podcast listenership. We're seeing growth in audiobooks listenership, and we're seeing growth in also what we call the analog system that we used to have before. Annual revenues for this format will rise through like a modest growth. It's not that steep. From a meager small amount to about 75 billion by the end of this 2024. The growth in audio entertainment market will be boosted by factors like cost. Because audio is easy to produce, it's easier for content to be transformed from video into audio to reach the flexibility of the end users as well. And AI will be able to support in building and generating such content as well. So despite the reach of listening hours, we believe that the addition of all the other channels will bolster the audio market. And what we see here below is podcasts generating in the developing space user content that are subscribed to, about $2 per listener. Audiobooks are also growing, and we see streaming audio services also growing for users that are able to pay. And also provision of the digital audio broadcast is also supporting the delivery of those services. So why does this matter? Cost and content are going hand in hand, and convenience of the end users are relevant to their participation in the usage. So we believe that if organizations are delivering audio services, they should look at spreading their channels into podcast areas, where if you can unify the content to be able to deliver podcast services, audio books, and streaming music, we believe that together they can deliver audio platforms that are united enough to be able to generate revenues that we are looking for. We are seeing the growth of the Gen Zs and the millennials, so the audio services need to be retuned and refocused to meet their need, and therefore unified platforms would be key for them to look at. How do I provide all these four services at a central location for my user engagement? The bottom line. So there are myriad of opportunities here. Content providers are going to generate extra revenue. Advertisers will have a chance of being innovative and provided short, instant advertising on these platforms. We also believe that they will attract new audiences if they are positioned well in the content they provide, and also be able to be definitive on the bespoke content that they have to spread their brands across through the miniature adverts that they can place in the audio deliverables. Now I will zoom into my last area, which is around telecom and technology. My key area is around smartphones. So as security becomes an issue, smartphone is becoming the central place of authentication, and I will call it a super app that can augment smartphones' utility. We are seeing a shift in that. In each year, trillions of transactions are processed through authentications on our mobile phones. We believe that has a bigger potential to grow. It is estimated that 2023 there was 1.3 trillion two-factor authentications, and that could grow if we get to using it for more services. And I'm going to share those thoughts as well. So we believe that if we move from passwords authentications to pass keys, the likelihood of a medium replacement of this service could generate the mobile phone being a central place for usage into accessing website, accessing payments, accessing our cars, accessing our homes, accessing travel infrastructure, and also being able to use our phones to access transport. All of them have individual markets that we believe has potential to grow. I've given some addressable market sizes in there, But if the phone becomes a central place for the usage of all these services, we see a growth in that as well. So the smartphone might become in the future the key primary tool that will be used to authenticate all services. And we see the growth in that happening globally and specifically in Africa as well in the transactions that we do. So given the widening future of smartphones, if nothing comes to topple it over, we see that becoming a cemented central place for the use, for it to be used for more utility services in the place of authentication and access. The bottom line will be in the medium term, smartphone authentication could swell into tens of trillions in this year alone, and then in the years ahead. Usage of smartphones authentication will likely be fractional at the moment, but we see if the use cases are deployed by service providers, we will see that growth coming through our industry and basically society, I think, will migrate. I think still there's a balance between use of smartphones and the feature phones, but as the smartphone usage grows, this will become the central location for authentication to help us access so many digital services that is being touted for Africa at the moment. So connectivity, in order for what I've just mentioned to happen, we need to make sure that we have coverage everywhere. So the digital agenda of all governments is to make sure that no one is left behind. For that to happen, there has to be an augmented solution that crosses all gaps, fills all gaps. At the moment, GSM is the only major key connectivity, but satellite is coming through to deliver direct services to phones, and we believe that that could help us give universal coverage and be able to implement the agri-tech solutions, implement the mobile smartphone being the central place for service delivery in digital. We're seeing how do you call it, institutions pioneer technologies that can deliver satellite services straight to current mobile phones that we have at the moment. The satellite institutions are investing quite a lot of money. 3 billion this year has been invested, and we believe our prediction shows that over 200 million smartphones can connect to satellite services currently. Moving forward, smartphone manufacturers are looking into delivering services that can delivering devices that will upgrade the chipset to be able to provide more functionality beyond just text and voice that the satellite services will deliver. Companies doing wonderful things are Apple and Global Star, and SpaceX is working with a telco and T-Mobile to deliver a mix of GSM services, terrestrial land services, and also the satellite services to be able to augment full coverage. There's a notion that if you build it, they will come. At the moment, expensive devices that can deliver more services and satellites connectivity charges might be high. But we think the space companies are aware of this, and therefore they are working on how do you call it, low orbit satellite that are affordable, deliver affordable services, enable to be able to attract the users that can pay minimal charges, and the ones that want extended services are able to pay more. This will bring new service revenues to the satellite institutions. It will bring new service revenue to the mobile operators, and also bring all the third parties that are providing technology solutions that needs coverage to deliver. And I think one key area will be how can IoT benefit from it to connect all devices and bring this Internet of Things dream to pass. There may be benefits and there may be also consequences as well. Connecting the unconnected is one of the benefits that every government is looking to, and then improving safety emergency services. And most importantly, we are looking at how will this be able to help connect all devices, connect all assets, and bring visibility for reliability for individuals and governments. The bottom line, this will make connectivity universal. Making connectivity like care is ambitious, but the potential is huge. It's lucrative for all the partners that are involved in this. And our prediction shows that the growth will require for us to look at it, especially Ghana, the issue that we had on the sea cable connectivity issues. We should be able to address that with a universal connectivity or backup from satellite services as we move forward. And I think we have stakeholders here that can support us discuss these things. All these things will add up in big data discussions. So we need to be able to enable our big data discussions and put data in the cloud for ease of use at the edge and at the core. So we believe that the discussions around governments looking for cloud sovereignty where data is resident locally should be discussed. The potential for government to build such infrastructure is worth around 41 billion. And this is good in a sense that if government is restricting data to be transported outside, data that is generated locally to be transported outside, there has to be infrastructure, there has to be legislation put together for that. And the discussion around GDPR is key here. If we are going to mine data for decision making and to really develop new solutions, we need to look at how do we localize our cloud enablement to be able to keep data that is generated locally to be used for decision making through analytics and AI. And we see a growth in that, 41 billion for government infrastructure. And we think that that will help the digitization agenda that all institutions are looking to deliver. This is key because regulations requires that data is stored locally. Cybersecurity is a threat to us. So the more you secure it locally, the more you reduce the risk of any external interference. And we think cloud is founded on the idea that location should not be an issue, but if you come to threats from intruders and for governments looking to stop these geopolitical fights over institutions that are resident to various locations, we think this is a good idea and the trend will grow from there. The bottom line is get data sovereignty right, get it local, use it locally, make decisions locally. And I think that this will instill first in customer confidence in knowing for sure that data is being used at where it's being generated. And we think that a few things will happen. The residency strategy for each institution should be developed. Comprehensive data audits should be discussed. And also we think investing in local regulations, because innovation is moving ahead of regulators, should be able to be discussed immediately. And then we can also discuss the supply chain issues that are currently in place. So basically, these are the 4 key areas that Deloitte is looking, prediction is sharing with the enterprise market. And we believe that we can support anyone that requires any intelligence, because we have what we call the intelligence locally to support company drive their strategy implementation and also drive the reporting part of their technology engagements locally, and they're fulfilling their regulatory objectives as well. Thank you. So we will open up for engagements with our panelists and also those who have any questions to ask on the 4 key areas that I've discussed. We've opened. So we'll hand over back to the team and we shall go into our discussions with our panelists. Thank you.
Mr. Alex Autry is currently the Managing Director of Ghana's leading video entertainment service. He was appointed by MultiChoice Africa in 2021 to head the MultiChoice Ghana business to further strengthen it in the provision of the best content on DSTV and GoTV, as well as ensuring seamless customer experience. He joined the MultiChoice Ghana business on the heels of the launch of the Aquaba Magic Channel, the company's first 24-hour Ghanaian channel. Prior to assuming this new role, Alex Autry was the Chief Customer Officer at MultiChoice Ghana. He has held roles at MultiChoice including Regional Finance Director for East, West and Central Africa, Finance Director for the West and Central Africa region, and Finance Director for MultiChoice Kenya. Alex brings over 15 years of experience in finance, accounting, commercial and general management in various industries and multinational organizations such as MultiChoice Africa, Weatherford International, Schlumberger, Newmont, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. He is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants UK and a member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants Ghana. He holds an MBA in Finance from the University of Ghana.
Dr. Janya Okweshemi is a partner and the West Africa Artificial Intelligence and Data Leader at Deloitte. She assists organizations with their AI transformation journey to enable data-driven decision-making throughout their organization. Dr. Janya leads the generative AI practice for West Africa, which promotes AI fluency within clients and industries, grows AI talent on the continent and together with global alliance partners, takes enterprise-scale generative AI solutions to clients in the form of AI labs, accelerated use case development, and large language model managed services within Deloitte's trustworthy AI framework. She has worked as a big data consultant in US, UK, and Asia Pacific, where she provided data management solutions to major international financial institutions such as JP Morgan Chase, Citi, UBS, HSBC, and telecommunications companies as BT and Vodafone. Dr. Janya Okwechemi holds a PhD in computer vision from University College London, with 6 scientific publications to date. Mr. Emmanuel Kwanzaa is the country manager at Main One Ghana. Prior to joining Main One, Emmanuel was the executive director for technical operations at Broadband Home Limited, a triple-play service provider where he led the technical team in the expansion drive of the company throughout Ghana for over 10 years. He sits on the board of the Ghana Internet Service Providers Association and is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Ghana Investment Fund for Electronic Communication. He is a founding member of the Accra Internet Exchange Point and the Ghana Internet Exchange Point, and has led the expansion and growth of the exchange for about 7 years. He also spent over 4 years at Vodafone Ghana, the then Ghana Telecom, where he was part of the first ADSL infrastructure deployment team. He is a seasoned IT professional with over 18 years of experience across Europe and Africa. He holds an executive MBA Finance from the University of Ghana Business School and an electrical and electronic engineering degree from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology.
Dr. Engineer Kenneth Ashibe is the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications. He holds a doctorate degree in Business Administration at the Swiss Management Center. He also has an MBA from the Leicester University and a BSc in Electrical and Electronic Engineering from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He had his secondary education at St. Augustine's College. He is the convener of the Media Coalition Against Galamsey and an advocate of media freedom and campaigner against attacks on journalists and media workers in Ghana. Kenneth has been donating blood since 1993 as a student at the university and continues to do so. He is passionate at contributing to increase voluntary blood donation in Ghana and ensures that we eliminate deaths due to the absence of blood at our health facilities.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you very much and welcome to the panel discussion. So I will advise all our panelists to come on camera and the technical team at the back end to also collate the questions that comes through our listeners through. So my first question will go to you, Janya. So we've spoken quite a lot, Dr. Janya, sorry. We've spoken quite a lot on AI, and I think the buzzwords now AI, generative AI to be precise. 2024, Deloitte's prediction, we predict the enterprise software revenue uplift of introduction of AI to grow by 10 million, starting from 0. What are the key benefits of integrating generative AI into enterprise software, particularly in terms of enhancing productivity and innovation? So this is my first question to you, Janya.
Sure. Thank you, Edward. As you rightly mentioned, generative AI has been the buzzword for a while, even though most of us are familiar with the traditional AI. But just to give you a brief overview of what the difference is and how it's impacting businesses, then we really can go deep dive onto what are the benefits and how it's really transforming. So most of us may be familiar with AI or the traditional AI at this point, where it's predicting a value in time, like it could predict stock prices, or it could predict a category. say, do I give this person a loan or not? While generative AI is the ability to create artifacts that were predominantly done by humans in the past. And these artifacts could be documents, video, voice, even computer code. So you see, it's now fundamentally transforming the way we do business, and it's having various impacts. In specifically, I'd like to categorize it in 3 different streams. It's impacting the business growth in the form of business strategy. A simple way of doing business strategy typically is to create scenarios and then hypothesis, and then hypothesize what may happen. And this, if A happens, then our strategy would be this. If B happens, this. With generative AI, businesses can actually simulate those scenarios because they can synthesize data on those scenarios, and they can go ahead and actually see some results and now base their decision on that. That's how it's impacting general business and the way it can look into strategizing going forward. The second biggest impact it's having is on customer experience. With the ability to generate artifacts, we can create personalized messages, and we can take our customer experience to a more hyper-personalized level. And that's also having a huge impact, especially for us on the continent, where we can now start using local languages to create a better experience and a more engaging environment for our customers. Now, going back to your specific question on enterprise software, can you hear me, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Excellent.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
So now going on the huge investment on the enterprise software and how generative AI is being embedded into this. This has taken us to our last category, which is also enhancing an organization's internal experience for the staff. How generative AI is now creating a better experience by reducing and removing redundant and repetitive tasks and helping automate a lot more to be more efficient. And also for the staff to spend a lot of their time on actually digesting and getting results and insights and making strategic decisions, as opposed to carrying out repetitive tasks. Let me give you an example. And this applies to different roles within an organization. So consider the CFO of an organization who needs to look at some certain financial reports or specific information on an ongoing basis. Typically, what would happen is that, say, some of this information sits in some core financial databases or systems that the IT department has to now extract this data for the specific period that the CFO has requested. Then someone else has to do some analysis, come up with some figures and some graphs that are relevant to the request. And then someone who knows the kind of reports that the CFO likes will now has to put that into a format and create that report that will then get sent to the CFO, who can then read and get to the answers that he or she wants. With generative AI, you have the ability to automate all of this, because in 2 ways, you can actually create this report. So you have the ability to digest the data, find some of these information, and actually generate content, which is generate the report with the figures in a specific style and tone, and also draft an email speaking directly, say, with a formal language to go to the CFO, so that CFO can have this. So you're reducing the time from days and weeks to probably a matter of minutes and hours, so that the CFO can get report. But you can actually go one step further. You can point the generative AI directly to the organization's data, to the relevant financial information, any other strategic or policy information, so that the CFO himself or herself can actually have their generative AI assistant who can start answering questions. So the CFO can say, what is our month-on-month revenue growth for the past 6 months? Or were there any unusual spikes? Or how aligned are we? We said we're going to spend X amount on technology. What is our budget versus what we've actually spent? So you see, it's already creating this opportunity to be a lot more productive. The same goes with a chief compliance officer, for example. There are new regulatory mandates coming out all the time that one needs to sit down and read through 70 pages of documents to understand what the new policies are, and then understand what the changes need to be made. With generative AI, we have the ability to read new material, new policies, also read our current policies that are within the organization, and see if there are any gaps between the new regulation and the policy that we have. And can even go one step further and go ahead and suggest things that we need to add to the policy. For example, perhaps with a specific regulation, previously you had a window of 7 days to report, and now the window has shrunk to 24 hours. It can actually spot these differences and go ahead and generate a paragraph that could go in as a new clause in your current policy that then needs to happen so that you're compliant. And then go ahead and send an email to everyone in the compliance department that, by the way, this policy has changed. Take note of paragraph so and so. So these are some of the abilities of natural language processing, the ability to understand and digest documents. But in addition to that, generative AI is also transforming the way we work, and productivity can come in different ways, where some of these enterprise solutions with the built-in generative AI ability can link to each other, and it can make an end-to-end life cycle of a process more efficient. A good example of this is the development process. So those of us in IT and software development, you can actually go from an email conversation where your manager or a specific product specifications are emailed to you, to automatically using generative AI to create architecture or diagrams on what the different data that needs to be plugged in, what the architecture looks like, and then go one step ahead and create code. Because if you remember, I said generative AI is able to create artifacts based on what it has learned, because it learns syntax. So in this case, it can learn the syntax of Python code, SQL code, or JavaScript. And it can go ahead and develop that code so that it can improve and accelerate the development lifecycle, while you then have the roles of the IT department transforming. So then they can go ahead and verify that the code is matching the requirements. They can also use already available generative AI solutions to even debug the code. So you see, Edward, these are a few examples that I've given you from different roles within an organization, and the list carries on. So there's huge advantage if this is done, and if generative AI is used responsibly and in the right manner to improve efficiency, to improve productivity, reduce costs, and accelerate operations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jania, on that. I will follow up with the question. Let me give you a quick preamble. So, in our prediction, we are also saying that the enterprises will actually spend money tuning to a tune of about 16 billion to grow these capabilities, 30% growth in that. How can companies effectively train generative AI on their own data and enhance productivity? Internal data, basically, yeah.
Sure. I think this concept is not new, at least to the technology, those involved in technology, and when it comes to investment in technology for businesses. There's always been this age-old question of build versus buy, right? Do you go ahead and just buy something off the shelf and get done with it? Or do you go to the other end of the spectrum where you build something very customized, specific to your requirements, and what are the different costs of that? It's something similar with generative AI, where just like the traditional softwares, usually the answer is somewhere in between. Because if you buy things off the shelf, maybe slightly cheaper, or and you can get a competitive price, but it doesn't answer all of your questions. On the other hand, if you were to build everything from scratch, and you need a lot of training data, you need a lot of resources, and you need the right skills to build it. Whereas where the two meet in the middle is that the organizations can leverage already existing large language models, and this comes in the form of the LLMs that are currently on various hyperscalers, which means it already comes with pre-trained model that can respond to some questions up to a certain level of efficiency. But the value for the organizations comes from using generative AI to unlock the enterprise data. And this is where you take what's already there and you now fine tune it with the information that is specific to your organization. And this is where the most gain is to be had. But also, as I say this, it's important that the information flow is out in, not in out, right? So you also need to be mindful of the kind of information that you are putting, and the kind of models that you're working are your own private models within your private tenancies. That's the general concept. However, when it comes to actually being efficient, there are various points, various things that one needs to point out. And that's specifically to do with the data. You need to be very efficient on the kind of data that you are providing for each use case and each application. The efficiency in building the features or selecting the features for that data. You touched upon this earlier in your presentation that there's a lot of consumption and some of the cost is based on consumption. So if you're putting a lot of redundant data that's taking up space, that's taking up more computational power, but is not necessary for your use case, then you're not being efficient. But also let's look at it from a different angle. Imagine you're building a generative AI model or the Gen AI assist for that CFO. CFO needs to have access to that financial data. But if you're building a model for the HR department to help with recruitment and onboarding, the HR model does not need to have access to financial data. Not only it's redundant, but there's also a risk of information being shared to people who are not privileged to have that information. So these are some of the features that you need to be building into when considering what are the different solutions that you want to leverage.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jana. Let me come to you, Dr. Ken. Doc, I think Jana has spoken quite a lot, and I give details on the technology space as well. Let me bring you from the perspective of the telecom area. What ways do you see collaboration in industry partners, government and agencies, and NGOs to address the broader sustainability? So all is geared towards these sustainability issues. How do you see it play in Ghana, a collaboration between all the stakeholders and institutions to fulfill our, our sustainability agenda?
So thank you very much for having me. And as always, this is an insightful session that we hold. And thanks, Deloitte, for the report. So, the whole conversation about sustainability, and when you were presenting, you talked about our share of the carbon footprint so far as the telecom sector is when you talk about the exactly concerned. The interesting thing is that from 2016, the telecom sector itself has taken the issues of ESG very seriously. And you got the GSMA, that is the Global Organization for the Telecommunication industry, taking the SDGs as very important milestones that the industry is supposed to drive. And the issues around reporting on that, the issues around working on that, is something that as an industry, we've been pushing. So you find out that in terms of the new technologies that are coming, all of that is ingrained into the issue of ESG, the issue of sustainability, the conversation around your eSIMs that you're having, when you talk about leaving copper and going to fiber, not only are you doing it even in terms of your transmission, but even in terms of, the SIMs that you're using as well. Not only have you been moving from the sizes and now making it, but getting to the point where you are completely going eSIMs. The issues of how do you reduce your power. And so in Ghana, for example, there's a lot of push of moving from to more cleaner energies, just to also make sure that you're a lot more sustainable, make sure that in the long term you're cheaper, make sure you're taking a lot of the waste out. And so doing this, it's not something that you can do alone. So you need to definitely look at the thing from public-private partnership, also bringing academia in, and then, as you say, bringing the NGOs in. Just recently, there's some collaboration that is happening with the EPA in terms of how to handle electronic waste, for example. And, there's an app that is being introduced called ElectroBin that would help in managing that. And it's being done in a very collaborative manner, being able to bring everybody together. for us as the chamber, for example, and you're engaging all the political parties in terms of their, their manifestos, and then you're asking them what are the things that we can do to push the issues of sustainability. So in Ghana, again, if you're bringing solar equipment for the telecom sector, for example, the panels are duty-free, but then the batteries and the other components are not. So how do you engage with government? How do you engage with these parties to say, going forward, how do we take that into consideration? Also, the issues around net metering. For example, if you got industry pushing in on the issue of power and trying to ensure that you are going green, how do you ensure that if you produce more than you needed, you are able to then put that back into the grid and exchange that? So that's conversation that as an industry we've been holding with the EPA, we've had with the Energy Commission, and we also had an engagement with CSOs to also bring them into those conversations, so they also will be able to advocate for it. And then a lot of advocacy and regulatory engagements that we've also been doing to drive that, because we also get it that, and again, it's a point you made, that the telecom sector is driving a lot of the digitization that is happening. So how do you ensure that other verticals as well are taking that into consideration when they are coming up with policies within the things they do? And so for some of these stakeholder engagements that we have, some dialogues that we have, these have become central to the conversations that we're having, because you realize that if we don't take that into consideration, you might be driving all these changes that you want to do, but then the earth is important. Where we live is an important place. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ken. So I'll come back to you on that. I think there's a standard questions in those ones that I see. I need to bring it back to you, Doc. So, but I'll go to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, so maybe you can unmute now. Doctor talked about this eSIMs, and it brings into conversation what we mentioned around smartphones. So in our predictions, I think we spoke about smartphones becoming a central location for more utility in authentication, online transactions, in having access to cars and businesses and all other things that we can bring to. I just want to pick your mind on how you think business adapting their systems and processes to leverage smartphones for authentication across a wide range of actions. In your space, being a technology specialist, how do you see that panning out? Mr. Kwati.
Thank you. Thank you, Deloitte team, and thank you, the other panelists, for the input already given. So in terms of smartphone authentication, I mean, smartphone itself has become a major part of our life in recent times. I mean, based on data in 2022 by Statista, we have about 6.6 billion smartphone users. And out of this, even in terms of internet traffic, you have about half of internet traffic running through our core networks being that from smartphones. So it just makes sense for businesses to try and use smartphones to do a lot of things. And recently, of course, authentication has become part of it. When we start from authentication, I just want to give a brief about when we see authentication in smartphone systems, what really do we mean? There are a lot of things that we can talk about. So we talk about pins and passwords, which is something that we've been using for a long time. But in recent times, you have newer and more secured forms of authentications via the smartphones, which we can see maybe biometric. So biometric here, you mean the fingerprint, you mean your facial, you mean your iris. So we're using that as a form of authentication. Also, we have what we call multiple or two-factor authentication and multiple-factor authentication, where we talk about using two different mediums to authenticate. So a lot of businesses are leveraging on this medium to help authenticate their own platforms. So when you talk about the multi-factor authentication, what businesses are doing is that, as an example, for the smartphones, they have some what we call authentication apps, right? So when you try to log onto your system, even from the start, you put on your laptop or you log onto it, there's a token that's sent to the phone, either through the app or through an SMS, and then you have to check to be sure that it's you who is logging in, and you have to put it on, and then you get authenticated. So businesses are looking at that. Other things they're looking at single sign-on authentications, where what this means. This is for the convenience aspect. So some businesses try to say, okay, so maybe my folks who use a lot of my systems are not really IT savvy and all that. So once you authenticate, I will send something to your smartphone. Once you authenticate once, you have access to any other system that I put in place. That's single sign-on authentications. There are others also go to the extent that they even integrate it into their identification systems in their system, so that automatically it is integrated. It becomes a centralized point of managing anybody who comes to access any of those the platforms. What I've also seen, I mean, in recent times, in some of the international organizations, what they do is that they take the phone. So you can use your phone to access company information, right? Now, what they do is that once you install company apps or company data, they try to segregate the phone into two. So if you go onto the phone, you have a portion that is only for company information. So to ensure that it's totally enhanced and they have proper authentications put there and things like that. So a lot of businesses are finding ways and means to leverage on this ability that is coming with smartphones. Smartphones are here to stay. I mean, I think they become, if you look at a smartphone today, in the past, you have your separate camera, you have your separate whatever. Now everything is part of the smartphone. And also the other point I'd like to talk about will also be tokens. So in the past, when we started getting worried about authentication and usage and all that, we had something we call a token, where you carry it around with you all the time. When you try to access your system, a cryptographic code is sent to that token, and that token then you use. Now, that token is actually part of the smartphone app. So your smartphone then will just get authenticated for you, and then you just are able to access. So there are numerous aspects of it. I mean, to the extent that we are even having some that we are able to integrate into access control systems. So, so either in your house or in an office's environment, where you would be able to, instead of, you punch either your PIN with your card and with your fingerprint, also with your phone is able to have a way of helping you authenticate, to grant you access to locations that you have been permitted to be able to access. So I think we've seen a lot of this in the smartphone area. A lot outside, we are seeing some here as well. I mean, most of the business that we are working with here as well are gaining that traction in usage. And we expect to see more of it this year, more of it going forward, as we move to use smartphone even more in our authentications.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kwatin. I think well elaborated. So still on the use of the smartphone being the central device currently, or we say until something comes to topple it is the king now. Let me come to you, Alex. You've also seen within the media space, smartphone being used as something central to delivery of your service and also consumption of videos and movies and stuff. If I can pick your mind on what is your industry basically doing as the smartphone becomes central into data and media consumption, what is your industry doing to position it even more for you to deliver more services in a more efficient way and for good user experience as well? So, Mr. Alex Autry, this is for you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. And thanks to Deloitte for this opportunity to also share. Okay, so true. Let me start by saying that, content consumption and the patterns have changed and continues to change drastically, right? Like you're saying, the mobile phone has really changed everything. So now people are moving from, more typical appointment viewing, which is more the traditional kind of viewing where you wait for the content to be broadcasted either live or delayed, typically in a weekly, daily format before you watch. People are now moving from that kind of traditional viewing to more on-demand, or the Gen Zs call it binge watching, more on-demand viewing, which, where you can watch anytime, anywhere, wherever you want, the content that you want. And mobile phone and technology is making this, very possible. So the shift from appointment viewing to binge watching, or if you like, on-demand viewing, it's actually a direct response to the development of new technologies and services, and mobile phones being, a big part of that. You would be surprised where people watch things now. In the queue when you're paying for something, anywhere, you can now watch because you have a mobile phone. So people are moving, like I said, from more demand viewing, from more appointment viewing, which is on linear, traditional, cable, satellite, TV, to more of OTT environment, more on-demand, SVOD, social media platforms, etc. Now, to the specific question, what the industry is doing. So this is actually an opportunity for us, right? The short answer is technology. And I think all the other panelists have talked about it. It's changing our lives. So now with the move from appointment viewing to more on-demand OTT type of viewing, you have to have technology. You cannot do without technology. So things like today we're using algorithms and other AI technologies to determine or to pick up data on what people are watching. It's much easier. So in the past, when you were on a more linear DTT satellite, it's difficult to know what the consumer is watching. But now with OTT platforms, you can track, you can look at what they are watching, what they are liking when they watch, the ratings they give for individual shows. So that helps us to personalize content and make personalized recommendations. So OTT platforms like our own Showmax, Netflix, Amazon Prime are using this to more personalize the experience for viewers. Also, there's something that is developing in the area of interactive storytelling experiences. So some platforms are now experimenting with interactive storytelling, where you can be watching a movie and let's say, the villain is supposed to die. You can decide, okay, no, I want the version where the villain doesn't die. And the story will take that angle, right? So you can interact with the story itself. And all these are being, made possible by technology, right? AI is helping generate even content now. So AI can generate content for you. We're using AI to do subtitling. In some cases, AI is being used to, subtitle. You don't have to manually sit down, listen, and, write subtitles now. AI is doing that for us. And then also, again, with the mobile phone, proliferation and all that, social media integration and influencer marketing has become very important. Now, OTT platforms are leveraging social media integration to understand the trends, the preferences. Influencer marketing is big now. So again, it's not even just affecting the content itself, but how to market the content. So people are on their mobile phones almost throughout the day. And so influencer marketing using various social media platforms has become big now. So we're going to move away from that traditional marketing environment also into more social media influencer marketing type of marketing. So we're moving from traditional marketing essentially to digital, and this is all enabled by the mobile phone, like you said, yeah.
Yeah, so Mr. Alex, thank you. Alex, thank you very much. So you've mentioned a mix of so many things, with mobile phone being the core to it. So the content you've given a mix. I want to shift that to Dr. Jania. You mentioned security. First, Alex, could you talk about your space? How are you regulated? So in this mix of combination of OTT, combination of people actually generating the revenue, generating their content, and also using your own services to deliver the time-driven ones. How are you regulated security-wise? And I'll bring that to Jania. So Jania, you can follow that up with how are we now making sure that end users get the right stuff on the intellectual property wise, and what is how do you call it, good enough for children to watch, people in these various age groups that we have. How is AI coming to augment making sure that people are watching the right content? So we'll start from you, Alex, on the regulatory bit to make sure you put the right thing out there.
Yeah, so with what is happening now, and with us all moving away from traditional to more of OTT digital environment, one key thing around regulation that is coming up is data privacy, right? So now it's becoming more stringent in terms of data privacy. And in Ghana, we have a law now. They're supposed to comply with various rules in terms of collection, storage, and use of consumer data. It's becoming very big now. So compliance efforts can be costly, because you also, again, need to invest in technology to ensure that you comply with the laws and you are not caught up, right? But that also presents opportunities. If you have strong data privacy practices, then you can also enhance consumer trust when they know that their data is safe with you. And you can also foster a culture of transparency and accountability. So yeah, I would say that the regulation, even though has not fully caught up with the technology, it's becoming more stringent and mostly around data privacy. Yeah.
So I'll circle back to you, Jania, Dr. Jania.
Thanks, Edward. Before I continue, can I just say I really loved what Alex mentioned on generating your own ending. I know my movies will all have happy ending. I have no patience and tolerance for violence and sad. There's already enough drama in real life. You know, we don't want to watch that on movies. So that's brilliant. But yes, Edward, the issue of risk and trust and all the ethical considerations is key, because trust is not inherent in AI. It's something that needs to be built, and it needs to be guardrails need to be put in place so that organizations can innovate confidently, and that's the key. You mentioned regulations. Yes, we are. I think I'm talking as an industry, as organizations. We're very driven by regulation. So when there is a regulation, then organizations do their utmost best to meet with those regulations and be compliant. However, when it comes to AI, while there are some concepts and guidance going around, the very first comprehensive AI regulation, the EU AI Act, was only recently really only recently came to play. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think from this month, it should go live, and companies have within 2 years at most, but some parts of it within a year that they need to comply with. So I'm going to touch up a little bit on the EU AI Act, but the message is that organizations cannot afford to wait for a regulator to tell you ABC, do and don't. Organizations need to start putting their own policies, and as Alex rightly mentioned, do take advantage of some of the already existing regulations like the GDPR Act, the Data Privacy Act, or some of the local versions like in Nigeria, there's NDPR, or the POPI Act, the Protection of Personal Information Act, that already has been put in place in some other aspects of technology that one needs to take advantage of. Let me deep dive a little bit on the AI EU Act. So what it's quite comprehensive, but the key messages are that there are, when we live in a world where AI becomes a part of the services that are offered to us, to the society, there are different categories of risk ratings on each of these applications, and it depends on what it's used for. And they've categorized it into 3 levels. The category 1 is the prohibited services. So there are certain things that are outright prohibited, you're not allowed to use AI for. For example, imagine if there were toys that are being built with some AI voice generator that are teaching our kids to say the wrong things or to do bad things. Those things are outright banned. Or if there are any sort of malicious AI usage that will attack a certain vulnerable group, that will then put their safeguarding into jeopardy. So there's certain acts that are just prohibited, that are not, AI is not allowed to be used. Or, like surveillance of, like public surveillance and prosecution without, say, a due a judgment and fair trial, for example. Because you can recognize someone, you can go and catch them. That is not going to happen. Then there are 2 other categories. There's the high risk categories, where it has to do with public safety, maybe aviation, medicine, that we're talking about human life. Then there are very stringent processes and controls that are put in place and due diligence that needs to happen. And a company has to prove that these things have been happening and the tests have been done before that can go into production. Then there are more of a low risk categories, which are more general use, maybe again, parts of production, or the apps that we get that put some filters on us and make us age 10 years or make us 16 years old again. So those are some of the things that perhaps there are less stringent rules. So that's the general category that the EU AI Act is going. But let's talk about some of the real risks in AI and what are some of the safeguarding that we could put in place as an organization and put that in our policies that could really make
Doc, can I give you 2 minutes to do that? So I'll come back to you on something, but I just want to give you 2 minutes on that, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So without going into details of the examples, then I will say organizations are looking into putting policies in place. And that's why at Deloitte, we have come up with the Deloitte's Trustworthy AI Act, which basically is based on 7 pillars. It puts the framework in place so that you make sure that you have data privacy and policy put in place. You make sure that the models that you build are transparent and explainable. Essentially, it means that if you've come up with a decision that AI was used, can you justify that decision? Can you describe what was the basis and foundations for that decision? It's fair and impartial, which means it's not ethically putting certain group in a disadvantage compared to others. Responsible. We know that today, if something happens, something goes wrong with an organization and they're not compliant with the regulators, the chief compliance officer is going to be in trouble. But imagine if AI was acting as a chief compliance officer. Do you think a robot is worried about penalty or jail or any of that? No. So how do you put accountability and responsibility in what you build? And also, how do you make sure it's robust and reliable? The data that you've used today, is it relevant 6 months from now? And all in all, how do you protect the safety and security of the models? I'll end there, Edward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jana. I'll come to you on cost. So, Mr. Kwating, there's something I want to talk about: connectivity. All this makes exciting discussion, but we need to make sure that this coverage issue is discussed. First, before that happens, Dr. Ken, what is the telecom industry discussing right now in line with what we see? Smartphone usage going up, regulations going up. We need to augment that with the service infrastructure itself. How is it growing to augment the interest in end user products and solutions at the enterprise and the consumer level? How are you positioning yourself with good network to bring sustainability apart as well, and also to support good user experience? And then we'll come back to Emmanuel on what are the infrastructure institutions doing currently, and we will discuss what happened last 3 weeks, what happened in Ghana, connectivity stuff. So, Doc, over to you.
Well, so thank you very much. The thing about it, and again, Doc, it was not only you who were excited about the fact that, we want, to control what it is that we watch and how we watch it. That if you go on to Showmax and Netflix, I have movies that I've watched up to particular points and I've left them, because where they were going, I didn't like them. So I really would want to be able to change that as well. And so because of that, for us as an industry, it is really important to really push this conversation about the smartphone usage. And so we're pushing to be able to also switch over from 2G and even 3G. But if you're going to be able to do that, then your basic and feature phones numbers in Ghana needs to go down. So how do we do it in such a way that we find a way of migrating the customers? Because at the end of all of this, you could bring your 5G technology in, you could drive the 6G that we're talking about, move Wi-Fi to the next level. When the customer base themselves do not have access to those devices, then you really would have a challenge. So like one of the, in the Telecom manifesto, for example, that we put forward to the political parties, one of the things that we're talking about is how do you reduce the cost of smartphone devices? And part of it, a lot of the chunk of it is taxation. So how do you take taxes off them? How could we go into the Rwandan example, for example, where Netflix would give Rwanda, the country, some money, and then they decide to give smartphones out. You make sure you do your needs-based and are able to give that to the customers. And then also the issues of the use cases. And in all of this conversation, I know we've not done a lot on digital finance, but you need to work at that as well. So the whole conversation around your fintech, around your payment systems, ensuring that you also have content in the language that people can understand. And that's why when Doc talks about the fact that AI is now able to help us to do that in such a way that the language barrier, because one of the challenges we have had in, so far as technology is concerned, is that technology has all been in English. Technology has all been, before now, has been text. So when you take my grandmother, for example, in German, and she has to type, when it comes to an OTP, she has to type. How is she going to do that? But now with AI, and then with using biometrics and all, she can look into the phone, talk to the phone in her local dialect, and the phone will be able to respond to it, be able to do the authentication that Emmanuel was talking about. So there's a lot of excitement coming in, but all of that will only happen when you start pushing smartphone into the hands of people, start pushing to get content in, and then the usage in the language that the people can understand. And also very important, the relevance of the content. The relevance of the content, make sure that the content is relevant to the people. So when we decide, and those are some of the questions I would follow up with you, Deloitte, about in terms of what we're seeing in the agri-tech space and all, is it what is, within our local context, so that people can use them to deal with the situations where you have, let me give you a typical example. I farm as well. You have situations where you go to some of these farming communities, they'll take pesticides, use the pesticides, wash it, swish it with water, and they start using that as a bottle to drink. Because the person does not understand all of this. The text that you're giving to him is printed on it. It's in some local language. But can you imagine if there was, you have an app that has an AI in it, that you then also have some content on it that she can scan and be able to tell her what it is that to do and how to be able to use it. So these are the things that we need. And so as an industry, we're positioning ourselves to do a lot of collaboration with people, not just within, the telecom sector, but within other sectors as well, to be able to drive the need base. Another conversation that we're having, when COVID came, we knew how EdTech, we all started using technology to drive education. But unfortunately, now that all of us can take the mask off, we seem to be going back on. But we need to really push that. An interesting conversation that's happening just in May, there's going to be a proof of concept. There is a team from Singapore that are looking into being able to use AI, being able to use augmented reality and all of that to do surgeries, so that, you're taking your scan, you have technology that can create a hologram out of it. and then you are able to see what else is in 3D. And then you have some specialists also outside who will be able to dial in to be able to aid you in surgeries and all. And this is something we're going to do in May, working together with the GSMA and our members. Even though 5G has not started yet, the minister said, very soon it's going to happen. But we're beginning to think about how to use it to improve the lives of our people. So all of this is happening, and conversations like this really is important.
Thank you very much, Doc. So, Emmanuel, so I preempted you before this. So, Doctor has spoken. This is a potential huge platform for delivering so many things. What do you think the infrastructure, where you sit now, what are you guys seeing? And why do we have coverage gaps? And then also talk about what happened to Ghana, whole shutdown last 3 weeks. Please, Emmanuel, over to you.
Thank you, Edward. So in terms of, coverage, for Ghana, what we have now is, in terms of internet connectivity and coverage into the regions, what we have is that we have about 5 different submarine cables that are brought cable onto the shore, right? So there's huge content at the shore, huge capacity at the shore. Now, between the shore and the end user or the mobile phone that sits in your hand, we have to go through a myriad of processes, right? So enterprises are different. We easily get to the enterprises because we just have one connectivity to their office or one connectivity to their branch network, to the bank. That's the easy part. Now, we have what we call terrestrial network infrastructure, right? And we also have last mile infrastructure that goes to various locations. So I think what we've seen, apart from the fact that the telcos have done the best to build infrastructure to go as far as possible, remember also that this is all driven by commercial, right? So commercial applications are driving to go to areas that will make you get revenue from. So that's where we build first. So those places are built, and then to get those revenues, and then we move to other locations. But I think there's been a lot of issues with regards to terrestrial fiber cuts over the years. There have been a lot of talks by Doc and his team with the regulators on how we improve upon this. I know that the fiber provider, myself inclusive, terrestrial fiber players have built in redundancies as much as possible in your terrestrial network to try and carry the capacity. But the capacity at the shore is huge. To try and carry the capacity all the way into the cities, and also even to our neighboring countries. But if we continue to have the fiber cuts, the cost of delivering the service to the end user will continue to increase. So it becomes difficult when people say that cost of capacity is going down, and it's not. And because we see customers coming to us and asking for 20% or whatever percent reduction year on year, but the cost to us is still high because the last mile is still high. We're still going to pay for it, and how we're going to get to the end user is still going to be high. But I know the MNOs are working around the clock with the likes of us as well to try and send as much capacity to the end user as possible. I also know that they, together with GIFEC, there's a work around in pushing to have rural telecommunication coverage, which will of course come with 3G, 4G, 3G for now, coverage to the rural areas, so that our folks in the rural areas who either to have no access at all to either data or voice or to that extent would then start having access. So I really I'm loving the conversation around the smartphone and how I think Goodluck talked about Rwanda getting smartphone access to to the user. How are we going to get to a point where we have systems where people in the rural areas and people who are using now young phones and all that will get to a point that they have cheaper smartphones to be able to use? Cheaper smartphones. Because our folks will not be able to afford the kind of smartphones that we are using in Accra and Kumasi and things like that. So that's something that policy-wise we need to find a way to get into the hands of the user. Then we can say that we have proper coverage
Yes.
to our people.
Okay. So before I come to you, Doc, I've seen your hand up, Dr. Ken. Emma, can you just end it up with, can we augment this coverage with the satellite opportunity that we discussed? And how do you think it will play out in costs?
Okay, so once you are bringing about satellite coverage, so the issue is that in terms of bringing coverage to the end user, satellite can complement that, because end user satellite would be, you go buy your own platform, you put it in your house or put it somewhere, you hook straight up to the satellite platform and you get that, right? But the satellites, even the satellite players and how they plan to deploy in West Africa and all that, will still depend on the likes of the submarine cable infrastructure that we bring into the country. Now, the submarine cable infrastructure brings bigger capacities. So when we started about 14 years ago in 2010, we're doing lightning wavelength of about 10 gig, right? So when I say 10 gig, from here to Europe, every wavelength will be like 10 gig. Currently, we are doing 100 gigs of wavelengths, and we are doing multiple of them. So capacity is huge that we've been able to bring. Satellite, on the other hand, will not drop that huge capacity. Apart from the latency issues that they've had, that now they are doing the likes of the technology of O3B with the new SpaceX and all that. Even that, the latency has been improved, but the capacity will not be that huge. But to the end user, who can hook up and want a small 10 meg or 20 meg, can take advantage of that, hook through the satellite and drop to a satellite central point. Most likely will be sitting in Accra, which will also hook onto the submarine cable for a bigger capacity so that they can have that kind of connectivity. So yes, it has to be, we see that the satellite is not, we can't avoid it. It's going to come. They are going to come here. They already come in. We've seen some of them already in play. We're working with some of them. We just have to work with them for the rural areas, a lot of it, especially for the rural areas, because it's difficult to go there. But it is not cheaper for the rural folks to buy the satellite nodes. If you try and get those satellite nodes now, it is not cheaper. You and I can afford it. They cannot. So that's also another policy thing that we need to look into and see how we can put all together to benefit the folks, so that we can have. We just need everybody to be on smartphone. We just need everybody to be on the internet. There are so many things we can do on the internet where we hook up. The likes of us, May1 and our team, we are ready to make sure there's always huge capacity.
To be
used. And Co are coming in, but we need to ensure that we find a way to get the end user to be able to have a device that can access it, a device you can purchase and can buy at a cost
service as well,
and be able to also
pay for the services. Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for that. So, Doc, your hand was up, and I think I don't know whether you might intentionally dodge my question on what happened to the shutdown in Ghana.
I will talk about it. Maybe I can talk about it before.
Let me give to Dr. Ken, and then I think we'll come back to you. So, Doc, your hand was up. Please share your submission and then put the context together for the shutdown for us, the blackout, basically.
Yeah, so taking what Iman was talking about, really very true. I just wanted to add the fact that last year, for example, it cost 6.7 million to fix fiber cards alone. So it is a huge chunk. So this money could have been used in extending fiber to the other end. And also, when we talk about the issues of coverage, it's nice to talk about coverage. So if you did 3G, for example, with all the technologies up to 3G, you have about 90% coverage. But then the big thing that we need to be looking at is the usage gap. In 2021, when the last usage gap was measured, in Ghana, there are people who are under a 3G coverage, a 4G coverage. They are close to a fiber network, but 60% of us, the usage gap is really huge. So in all of this that we do, our focus should be on also bridging, and most importantly, bridging the usage gap as we work on, bridging the satellite gap. And again, I agree with Emmanuel that satellite is definitely going to complement what it is that we do. It has to be part of the mix to be able to resolve the issues of the very difficult to reach areas and all of that. As we talk about the cost of telecommunication,
I think Doc is gone off. Just to reiterate that our listeners, you can put your questions through. We have a team at the back end to collate them so the panelists can do justice to that. So please get your questions through. Doc, are you back? I think you went off a little bit. Can you complete your submission, please?
Yes. So again, so on the 14th, so I think that Emmanuel would answer the issues about what has happened to the fiber, but we all know that in 2020, the NCA decided, spoke to all the MNOs and BWAs, that not only if main one is your main submarine fiber and has more capacity to carry twice or three times your maximum demand, you were supposed to add 2 other cables physically connected to it. So we dealt with the issues of redundancy. The challenge is resilience. The challenge is nobody thought, the same way COVID, before COVID came, nobody knew. That's what hit us. So definitely now the conversation would be beyond all the redundancies that you're putting in, beyond all the other cables that are coming in. How do we build with, how do we build resilience? And for me, I'll speak about 2 ways. And we need to make sure that we are solidifying even our terrestrial coverage. We have, these electric pylons that we connect to our other countries as well. Gridco, VRA had fiber sitting on top of them. How do we integrate that and make sure that this is not just a Ghanaian thing, but it's an ECOWAS, an African-wide thing, so that as we have the main ones bringing the cables into the coast as well, you have these connectivities that are there, to be able to access these cables, to be able to complete your rings once any of these cables go down. And again, something that Emmanuel can speak to, the internet exchanges, we need to work at that. And you also talked about the sovereignty, the cloud sovereignty things. Because some of the challenges we faced when those 4 cables went down was the fact that too many of our content is sitting outside our shores. So though you might have connectivity internally, you couldn't get that. So we need to invest into the Ghana Internet Exchange, the Accra Exchange, deepen all of that. Make sure that even when we do cloud, a lot more of them are Ghana-based. At least part of them are Ghana-based, and your interconnections are properly done so that we can build that resilience. So one day, if the CJS decides to leave all of us and we are just on land, and so all the cables go, at least some of the things that we have to do, we are able to do that. So this conversation really, and I'm seeing the NCA beginning to have conversations again, and it has to be very collaborative between operators, between the regulators, policymakers, and everybody, to be able to ensure that as we leave redundancies, we are able to build resilience into not only just the connectivity, but the use cases and the access as well.
As well. Thank you very much, Doc. So on the note of that, I think I have a question from somebody who put into the question section. Nicholas Afram says, how can we harness strategic planning? And this is open to anybody, but Ken, I think it will resonate with you. How can we harness strategic planning and partnership agreements with existing technology giants in driving sustainable digital transformation in the multimedia and telecommunication industry revolution? How can we mitigate the negative effects and the impact of generative AI adoption in the operational management of African economy? So I think he's put 3 questions in one. Let me start from you, Ken, go to Jania, and then end with Alex.
Right. So I think that the issue about a lot of these are OTT partners, it's a very critical conversation to have, because some of the challenges has been that most of the investments have been done by the like of Emmanuel and the telcos and all of that. But you have these global partners who also use this infrastructure, who are doing very little investment in. So the issue about all of us contributing to build the resilience is important. But this is a conversation that we cannot just have as Ghanaians. This is a conversation that even the Europeans are struggling to do. So we need to come together as AU, come together as Smart Africa, and find ways in which we can engage them. So the likes of, the Facebooks, the Googles, and all of that need to be contributing a lot more into building that resilient networks that we're talking about. So if you take Main One, for example, they are paying their regulatory fees, they are paying their taxes and all of that. These other, players who also then feed on these systems are not in our market. So normally they don't pay all of this. They don't contribute to building the infrastructure. So we need to have a conversation about their equitable contribution into building this resilience. Because when we build it and it's available, they will also benefit from it. When that 14th March happened, definitely they would have seen some losses as well. So there's that conversation that needs to be had, which we need to do at the global level to be able to ensure that they also are making equitable contributions to be able to build that systems that we're talking about.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ken. Dr. Jana, please, your contribution in the Nicholas's question on the adoption of AI. And then we'll end with you, Alex, on that bit. He mentioned the collaboration for multimedia. Yes, okay.
So how do we mitigate the negative effects and impact of generative AI adoption in the operational management of African economies? I think we were discussing this with the panelists just before we kicked off. I think my view is actually the contrary. So let me explain what I mean. The risks and negative impact is the same everywhere as it would be here. So this is my personal opinion. Because risks of AI are risks of AI, ethical risk, bias, hallucination, all of those. It's no different here than it would be in US, UK, and Canada. But the opportunities here are different because now with generative AI, we have the opportunity to solve for unique problems in the African continent. Like it was earlier mentioned, the language barrier. If you bought, say, a sat-nav, a navigation system for your car, it would always speak in English. So say, an older generation who's still driving and speaks the local language would not be able to take advantage of that. Whereas with generative AI, we could actually build solutions and build models using the local dialect based on the local culture, etc. So I just wanted to put that out there that if we're talking about the negative impact, it's not, to me, it's not specific to the African continent, but we can talk about the negative impact and one can mitigate that. And the question, the first key step to that is by creating awareness. A lot of us are not even aware of the risks of AI. So as a first step, any organization that is looking to use AI is to educate them on the benefits and also on the risks. Simple things like, yes, ChatGPT is great, while you can go and ask for some advice on, I don't know, which of the two, say, gaming consoles out there are the best or benefits. It becomes a terrible idea if you decide to put your company private information out there to ChatGPT because you have this urgent report to create, and all of a sudden you've just put your company's last 6 months financials out there to quickly build those graphs for you because you're not very conversant with Excel, for example. See, that's the kind of education, simple things like you do not put company and customer private data onto the open platform. Simple things like that, just like the example that was given, that if someone is using the pesticides bottle, washing them and using it to drink water, and that's terrible for their health, it's simple steps like that that you can start creating awareness. And those are some of the things that I think as a first step organizations can do, and creating and also putting controls in place. And these are some of the things that have happened in other international organizations as well. For example, a well-known organization was using AI during their recruitment process to reach through the CVs and shortlist candidates so that then they can be interviewed. And some time passed and they realized, and that was for an engineering role. And some time passed and they realized there were no female candidates coming through the door, only to find out that the algorithm was outright rejecting any female candidates. Why? Because they had based their decision on historic data. And historically, say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there weren't that many female applicants for engineering positions. And now things have changed. By using wrong data, they had created unintentional bias. So again, those are some of the conversations we have with our IT team and those who are tasked with developing these solutions. Make sure there's diversity in the bias so you're not creating exclusions intentionally or unintentionally. And again, not using the algorithm and the AI solutions as a black box because, say, today I'm very angry with the world, especially, say, I always give this example, say you are the banking officer who's in charge of giving out loans and your girlfriend just broke up with you. And this person, he decides he's hating all the women in the world and he's going to put a code in there that no women get loans today and packages it up in this black box and puts it out into production. Who's going to find out? right? So it's those are the controls that you need to put in place to build transparency and then to create trust.
Really exciting insight, Dr. Janet. Thank you very much. So let me wrap up with you, Alex. So how do you see the collaboration within your space and the telecom in delivering a total service?
Yeah, so let me just say that partnerships is the way to go, right? There's the talk of the holy grail of triple play, i.e. voice, data, content, but it's difficult for just one player to do that, right? Because the content business is very different from the voice and the data business. So content shelf life is very short. For instance, Arsenal lost yesterday. That match is waste. Now you can't do anything with that match again. So there has to be partnerships, and I think it will work much better as internet penetration and the cost becomes, cost becomes cheaper and affordable. Penetration increases. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you very much, all the panelists. I think we've had a very good conversation, deep insights. I'm really excited about that. We had some question. I think Nicholas was the only person who has a question. I don't know whether the technical team have other channels where the listeners have come in with questions. But if we don't have any questions out there, I think I will hand over back to our host for the day, our partner Kofi Uwea, and then we can take through the rest of the program. I think we've made quite a good we've had quite a good discussion here. So Kofi, if I can hand over back to you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the panelists, for a good discussion.
Thank you, Edward, and thank you, panelists. I think before I give the closing remark, we have to launch the prediction, that is the report. So I'll hand over to Charles to kindly launch the report. Charles, are you there? Yes, Charles.
Charles, I think you're muted. Charles, you're muted.
Tim, can you display the code? Can we display the QR code? Charles, you are muted. I'm not sure.
No, I'm
okay, we can hear you now.
Unmuted.
All right. Okay.
Exactly. Well, I would say this is very insightful and educative thought leadership, and indeed technology, telecom and media is evolving every day. It's becoming bigger. The economy of technology, telecom and media is very huge, and indeed the panelists made they actually provided very fruitful suggestions, comments, and also educated our audience very well. This particular report is going to provide a lot of knowledge to all and sundry, all the audience, as well as prospective audience, those who couldn't join but would have access to the report subsequently. So I must say that you can download this report in the chat box, and also we have uploaded it on our website, deloitte.com.gh, as well as all our social media handles. So anyone who would like to have a look at our report could visit our social media handles as well as our website, deloitte.com.gh. And indeed, I would speak briefly about the bottom line before I would formally launch the report. So indeed, the bottom line talks about tech startups may still have to think carefully about their funding strategies in the coming year as venture debt funding recovers. But as the market recovers, startups would likely be well positioned
to build towards sustainable growth in the future. So there's so much opportunities within this space. And I like the fact that Tanya talked about customer experience as far as the evolution of artificial intelligence. And, this industry is a particular industry that keeps evolving year on year, and we must take a very critical look at that. I'm sure the policy makers, some of them may have been on the call, and we need to develop regulatory framework or enhance it in order for us to be able to regulate the sector. The stakeholders may not be able to wait for policymakers, but indeed policymakers must also ensure that we have a well structured policy framework as well as related to be able to regulate the space very well. So indeed, this has been a remarkable conversation. And for us at Deloitte, we lead the way. So this report, we urge all and sundry to access the report on our platforms, our website, and our social media handles. And I will repeat, our website is deloitte.com.gh. You can have access to the report, read the details, and know more about the evolution of technology, media, and telecom. We believe that this space has a lot of opportunities, job creation, revenue generation, and what have you. So on this note, I formally launch this report, the Technology, Media, Telecom Report for 2024.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Charles. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you will agree with me that we've done justice to the topic, and our panel have really touched on key aspects of the report and also brought it home to us in Ghana and beyond. So I would like to say thank you to every one of you who have made our time to participate and also listen to us this morning. It's been a wonderful time. It's been a very insightful presentation. One thing I would like to say is that please don't just read the report. Take advantage of the trends and the opportunities that abound in the TMT prediction for 2024. We hope to see you next year. By the time we would be coming up with the 2025 predictions. And hopefully by then, we'll, beyond just having the industry players, we'll try as much as we can to bring some of the regulators so that as we'll have a fair balance of the panelists to talk from both practitioners' perspective, the expert perspective, and the regulator's perspective. See you next time and see you 2025. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Deloitte managed application security, resolving vulnerabilities smart and cost-effective. Creating applications to improve everyday life for everyone is exciting. Unfortunately, securing these newfound solutions is slightly less exhilarating and often has less priority during development. This leads to beta and even final applications with bugs, vulnerabilities, and security risks, resulting in applications that very well could be hacked and abused to gain personal information. Most often, penetration testing is used to discover such vulnerabilities. Normally, this is done when development is almost finished. Unfortunately, penetration testing leaves room for undiscovered vulnerabilities, especially since much vulnerability is caused by mistakes in the application's source code. Discovering and fixing security vulnerabilities in the final phases of the development lifecycle is 15 or more times more expensive than fixing the same vulnerability in the early phase. Deloitte offers a world-class solution. Elaborate application security testing and source code reviews within the early stages of development with Managed Application Security Service, a large team of experts that use all of the available leading testing tools and methodologies to thoroughly test application security. This team combines penetration testing and software engineering skills. Due to the use of an in-house developed platform, Managed Application Security can test large volumes of applications. This allows Deloitte to test applications in a consistent manner, leverage the appropriate tools that are required for the specific tests, and report with high reliability. Deloitte performs these tests in a managed service model, allowing you to only pay for the service when needed, reduce license fees, and maximize flexibility. Deloitte Managed Application Security, resolving vulnerabilities smart and cost-effective. Deloitte Managed Application Security, resolving vulnerabilities smart and cost-effective. Creating applications to improve everyday life for everyone is exciting. Unfortunately, securing these newfound solutions is slightly less exhilarating and often has less priority during development. This leads to beta and even final applications with bugs, vulnerabilities, and security risks, resulting in applications that very well could be hacked and abused to gain personal information. Most often, penetration testing is used to discover such vulnerabilities. Normally, this is done when development is almost finished. Unfortunately, penetration testing leaves room for undiscovered vulnerabilities, especially since much vulnerability is caused by mistakes in the application's source code. Discovering and fixing security vulnerabilities in the final phases of the development lifecycle is 15 or